Say something.
Something. Sangar rasa live larsu.
Yes, yes. Welcome to the AFGHANEYE YouTube channel. If this is your first visit, make sure to subscribe and press the notification bell so that you won't miss any of our new videos.
Oh my days, we gained about another 100 and something subscribers over the last couple of days.
Yes, yes. So, assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. We are live again. AFGHANEYE live. This time, my dear friend Ahmed-Waleed Kakar is back. Just want to check something. The guys who are in the chat, can you let me know if the audio's okay? Waleed, say something.
Something,
Something. Say something.
something, something, something,
Okay.
something. Let me just and just give me a second. I'm just sending out the link to friends and family. And let guys just bear with us for a second. But sorry, that was my phone. I've got it open on my phone. But guys, just bear with us a second. We're just going to wait for a couple of more people to join us, whilst we also sort of send out the link to all of our friends, family, share it on social media, etc. We don't want, just as we want you guys to hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, enjoy the live stream. We also want others to. Let me just check what the live chat is saying. Waleed is the best. His audio is always louder than Paykhar. Okay. Sangar, they're of the opinion that my audio is better than yours. Waleed, that girl, yeah, I don't know about her. Thanks. Okay, sure.
Okay. Um, yes. So I think the audio is now better. Okay. Waqas Afzal, Angar Dutane, Sam M, Zaid DZ, Darab Qureshi, HG, Mustafa Aziz, Yusuf Fazalpur, Osama Qayyum, all of you, very, very welcome to another Afghan Eye Live. Guys, it's a pleasure to have you all with us. Taha Mazari, welcome. Yes, Taha Mazari said there is reports of Kabul. Assault is underway. We're going to discuss that as well. Uh, very, very uh, troublesome time. So let's see. Mustafa Aziz. Hi, guys. Okay, guys, can you all do
Sangar,
us a favor?
yeah. Guys, everyone that's here, please do us a favor. Please share the link on your social medias because I'm assuming you found out from social media that we'd be holding the live stream. Please do that. And Sangar, I'm also going to ask you with your, I think you're nearly at 8,000 followers now. With your 8,000 followers to please tweet out the link.
All right.
And we'll wait. We've got more people coming in, Alhamdulillah. We'll just wait until we've got a bit of a fuller house, and yeah, we'll get started because there is a lot to discuss. But anyways, up until we actually do get started, just how is everyone doing in the chat? I know you can't hear, you can't sorry sort of speak back to me, but I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone's family is doing okay.
Walid,
Especially,
can you,
especially, yeah, of
I'm sorry, can you lower the gain on your microphone?
course I can.
Because you're making me deaf. Okay.
Okay. So, with regard to the reports that they're starting to go into Kabul, we'll get back to that later because we need to recap on a day's events. But hold me to this, Sangar, and everyone that is watching holds me to this. What I suspect, or what I hope rather, this is is sort of an attempt to cause a collapse of the security apparatus, to sort of just induce as much panic as possible to sort of induce that sort of collapse. That is what I hope it is, because I'm sure I speak for, I mean, I speak for myself, of course, I speak for Sangar, but I also speak for the people that are with us right now, that we all have a family in Kabul, and the population of Kabul has increased, especially as a result of all of the IDPs going in.
Walid, have you
Yes,
lowered the gain on your?
I have.
Okay,
But the
but
thing is
your
that
volume is extremely like you're
ev-
very loud.
everyone seems to like that though in the live chat.
Yeah, but if I could raise the volume of my microphone as well, then it wouldn't be a problem. But
I see, I
okay,
see. شو
guys,
what's شده يا
os os
قرارك
os os بيخي سيدة بيخي سيدة.
what's سنده
Oh, guys, in
مشتري
the chat.
دا وس بينزت سالويشت كاسة وس مشتري ستا.
Okay, we can start. Yeah, just let me tweet out. We are live.
Someone is asking us, why don't we use StreamYard?
Because
We've used it before. It wasn't great, to be honest. Omar Saifullah Barakzai is saying, Salam alaikum wa alaikum assalam. I hope you're doing well. Omar Saifullah. Someone is now saying that Sangar is now the loud one.
okay.
Well, Waleed was fine and Sangar
Now,
was the loud one.
now is it better? Is it better now? Yeah, Walid is always fine, but okay, guys. Before we start, last night I was alone because my dear friend Ahmed-Waleed Kakar, he was unable to do the live stream. So first of all, let's do a catch up. Walid, can you tell me what was the reason why you couldn't be with us yesterday?
Well, I mean, there were two reasons. I sort of told you in the middle of the day that I wouldn't be able to come to the live stream at night, and that was because 2 nights ago, so the last time I was on the live stream, I barely slept that night, because I was quite frankly sick to my stomach with worry as to how my family in Kandahar were doing. So I wasn't really able to sleep. I woke up, massive headache, work that day, as you do. And then, yeah, I sort of cancelled um, the my attendance at the live stream um, for the night. And yeah, that I watched a bit, but my head was just pounding. It wasn't the best day for me yesterday or the night before. However, I have good news, Sangar.
Yes.
And the good news is that all of my relatives are fine, and fine is obviously um, relative. They're obviously some are still displaced, and I haven't yet been able to speak to them. Those that follow me on Twitter will have seen that I actually spoke to the BBC this morning on BBC World Service Radio. I spoke about my family and I mentioned the fact that internet in Kandahar is still quite scarce. And unfortunately, I haven't actually been able to speak directly to each and every single one of my family members because they live sort of dispersed and spread out through the city. Um, but I spoke to one. Some of my family members, like I said, are displaced. They were displaced. They were living in the west of the city. They were displaced a couple of days ago. I spoke to another family member, and his shop in the center of the city. He is a businessman who sells fridges and household appliances primarily. His shop was riddled with bullets. His fridges as well were riddled with bullets. But as we say in Pashto, the mal tawan diwi, the sar tawan di nawi. So may the loss be of the wealth, but not of one's head, essentially. But I also spoke to him about the general situation in Kandahar, and I also spoke to another couple of people. So the situation in Kandahar, generally speaking, from what I know, contrary to some of the reports that we're hearing, is that life is going back to normal slowly. There was a tense atmosphere at the beginning, but people are starting to go back to their lives. There is a widespread sort of sense of relief, and that's obviously because people are happy that the fighting and the insecurity and the what if and the who if has kind of gone. There was a formal ceremony today in which the former governor of Kandahar, that is President Ghani's governor of Kandahar, formally handed over responsibility and the governance of Kandahar to Haji Wafa, who is the governor of Kandahar for the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, i.e., the Taliban. People have been, there were a series of khutbas. So, yesterday, for those of the people that aren't Muslim here, yesterday was Friday. It's a holy day. It's the Muslim holy day. It's like our Sunday or our Sabbath, depending on which religion you follow over here. But there were sermons in the different mosques in the masajid. And according to what I hear in the masajid, these sermons are organized by the Taliban, in which they were sort of saying stuff. They weren't going too deep into sort of the intricacies and political detail. But what they were saying is that they're not going to govern like 20 years before. They were promising that things had changed, and as things had changed, that they had changed with them, and there was also sort of a general there was an audio message released by Haji Wafa, the Taliban governor of Kandahar, in which he told people that there'd been a general amnesty announced, so ex-soldiers and people of what he called the corrupt administration, people who had worked for that corrupt administration, could go back to their offices, their workplaces, that people did not need to flee, and that business should continue as usual. With regard to schools, obviously, because that's a key point of contention in the coverage of Afghanistan, what I'm hearing is that schools are currently closed in Kandahar because there's a heat wave of the like that hasn't been seen for years. So schools are closed, but people have been instructed to go to school or go to school as normal, rather. So the status quo still applies. Universities are also open. Um, that applies equally for women and for men. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's obviously subject to certain requirements, such as women observing the correct Islamic hijab as the Taliban see it, and sort of education or educational establishments being segregated between the sexes. Now, what we're hearing from Herat, which also fell to the Taliban in the same day, was that schools and universities for the time being are closed. And that's interesting because the Taliban's sort of propaganda channels have recorded videos in the sort of center of Herat city in which they've sort of said, look, the cars and everything are going around, everything is normal, life is going back to normal. The Islamic Emirate has guaranteed sort of the safety and security of everyone. But then when we asked them why schools and universities were closed, they said that there's still a military state of affairs active and operational in Herat city. So there is a bit of a contradiction there. But the fact that they are saying that it's a military state of affairs and that's why schools and universities are closed, I would say that is, we could be cautiously optimistic about that, especially
But
because in Kandahar, yeah.
but the thing is that this is nothing new. They said the exactly same thing 20 years ago when they closed schools. They said it's because so it's not safe, and now they're saying the exactly same thing. So it's
Yeah,
an
but and there's another parallel with 20 years ago as well. In that 20 years ago, lawyer Paktia was given a certain level of autonomy under the late Jalaluddin Haqqani, who was obviously a very famous Mujahideen commander and later Minister of Borders and Tribal Affairs of the Taliban. Now, under him, lawyer Paktia had a certain level of autonomy from Kandahar, which was the de facto capital, and under Jalaluddin Haqqani, there was girls' schools were generally operate. I mean, those girls' schools that remained were operational. So I think the parallel that we can draw to 20 or 25 years ago is that on a regional level, there will be differences and whatever. But I hope, and I'm sure you hope as well, Sangat, that the ambiguities and the irregularities and the inconsistencies are clarified and addressed because like I said, my relatives in Kandahar, they're being told business as usual, right? Whereas in Herat we're hearing something different. So hopefully what is happening in Herat ends up becoming more and more like Kandahar. And that is so sorry guys, I wasn't able to join the live stream yesterday, but that is the update on my side. My family, alhamdulillah ta'ala, are well. Others, unfortunately, don't have such good news, as we will talk about in a bit. And yeah, so Sangar, we've got an entire day, and as things go um, in these days during Afghanistan, an entire day is a long, long time. So let's start. Let's get into the day.
Yeah. Okay. So, guys, I see that people are asking questions. I am not able, unfortunately, to read the entire chat because there are simply too many messages. So, I'm going to request you all to, when you pose a question, to tag us in the question and use question marks so that I know that, that's a question that we need to answer. Uh, so if you do
And
that, please.
I'm going to make another humble request of everyone here as well. That is that there's a bit of a conversation going on in the live chat, and that makes it difficult for us to answer questions. So I'm really happy that everyone is feeling so conversational and bubbly, but for the sake of us trying to answer the questions that you're asking, um, please desist from being conversational in the live chat, and I don't know, perhaps exchange numbers with each other and message each other privately.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Yes. So, guys, now on a more serious note, we are dealing with an exceptionally uh, volatile situation in Afghanistan. While you see a very rapid collapse of provincial capitals, there are still fighting going on in many areas, and there are people being killed as we speak. There are people who are being displaced as we speak. And just because we don't get all the facts and details and the exact numbers of how many people have been killed, how many people have been injured, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It does happen. It's a very dangerous situation in Afghanistan, and people are terrified. People are terrified. They're very scared, and this is why last night, when I ended the live stream, I said we should just pray that nobody dies tomorrow, and I think we should do that all the time because what we all strive for is peace, stability, security for everyone, and especially at this current moment. And now I want to switch to today's main topic. So first of all, let's go to the current map of Afghanistan as we see it right now. As you guys have probably heard, more parts of the country have collapsed. The Taliban have taken Paktika, Paktia today, two provinces in the southeast of the country. They've taken Kunar in the east of the country, Faryab all the way in the north, and Balkh also in the north. So if you look at the map right now, you see that the entire map is green. There is Bamyan that is still under government control. Daikundi, for a large part, is under the government control. Parwan province is also under government control, and obviously Kabul and Panjshir. But the situation in Kapisa, which is a small province to the north of Kabul, it's a small green bit that you see on the map. And Laghman has also collapsed, and Nangarhar as well, just a couple of hours ago. So basically, it leaves us with 5 provinces that are firmly under government control right now. This is unprecedented. This hasn't happened in the last 20 years, obviously. But Waleed, you're the historian here. Can you remember, or do you know any time in our recent history that the whole country has been taken within like 10 days like this at this fast pace?
No, Soviet invasion maybe. Yeah, the Soviet invasion when they basically came over. Um, yeah, the Soviet or the American invasion rather.
Yeah?
But we're bearing in mind those came with overwhelming air power and logistical sort of superiority. But no, at no period can I recall an indigenous force overrunning the whole country so much in its entirety. And there's a guy, sorry, that was disrespectful. There's a person in the live chat called Akil Al Omrani saying half of Parwan has fallen. I've just returned from Ghorband, which has been fully overrun. That's correct. Ghorband, we saw video footage weeks ago of the Taliban in Ghorband ripping down posters of Ahmad Shah Massoud in its, in its Ahmad Shah Massoud that were being put all over the wall. Abdullah is saying the American invasion took 31 days. Yeah, that is true, but it wasn't a full-on invasion in that sense. It like what I'm trying to get at here is that the Taliban and we could say that this offensive has gone on for a couple of months, first with the district centers and everything. So, but yeah, you're right. The American invasion did take place, and it was also different from the Soviet invasion in that there wasn't that much of a heavy troop presence at the beginning. But yeah, so today, as Sangar mentioned, we had Paktika falling to the Taliban. The provincial capital, Sharana, fell to the Taliban later on. And obviously, in characteristic fashion, the Taliban broke open the prison and let the prisoners out as part of their general amnesty that they have announced. So, Sangar, that's from nun.asia or Asia Today or Asia.today, which is probably the biggest Pashto news or current affairs website. And yeah, Sangar, do you want to play that footage?
Yeah, I cannot play the footage, but I've just have a
Okay,
still of the images.
yeah.
So this morning, let me just do a describe what the last few days have been like in Afghanistan. Uh, what happens is every morning, right after dawn, uh, there is an attack on a major prison in these major provincial capitals. This morning it was Sharana in Paktika. The day started with an attack on the prison, and the prisoners were released. And at the same time, Taliban were attacking the city, so they were basically breaking through the security belt around the city. And this pattern repeats itself every day in the morning for each city, but over the course of the day, they also go to other cities. So it started in Paktika, and then they moved on to Gardez, and
Well,
in other parts
Gardez,
as well.
Gardez, and there was also Kunar. So Asadabad was overrun, which was Asadabad is the capital of Kunar province. Um, I believe Khost is still government or KPF controlled. Is that the case, Sangar?
Uh, what I've heard is that a lot of people, government security forces, moved from Khost to Paktia.
Okay.
But while they were moving across provincial borders,
Hmm.
most of them surrendered.
I see.
There are some parts of some part of Host, I think Bak district and a few other districts that are under Taliban control, but I am not sure about the city. I have to verify that.
I see.
I haven't heard anything for the last couple of hours about Host, so I don't know what's
Neither have.
going on there. But it's very important to note, since we are talking about Host and Paktia, is that uh, there the among all the fighting forces that are on the government side, there are different kinds of militias and groups fighting on the government side, and one of the most notorious militias is the Host Protection Force. They have been very effective in fighting against Taliban in Host Paktia and Paktika. But they're also very notorious because of human rights violation and extrajudicial
And
killings.
let me just explain this and contextualize this as well. So for those of for everyone that read the article on Kandahar tribal warfare, Spin Boldak, etc. So what you have is that since 2001, there's been a organized, concerted, and coordinated effort by the Americans and their local clients to essentially get support or find men to fight against the Taliban by trying to exploit tribal rivalries or divisions. So in Kandahar, we mentioned that Hamid Karzai was basically a tribal chief. Gul Agha Shirzai was basically a tribal chief, and General Abdul Razik Atikzai, who was allied to these two, was also sort of a leader of the subdivision of his tribe. And they used the patronage that they were given from the Americans to sort of advance their networks, their family, their kinsmen, etc., so on and so forth. You have a similar thing in Khost. And you have a similar thing in Khost, and in speaking to people, this what I've gathered is that there's almost been an attempt at subdivisions within tribes. So Zaze Maidan in Khost province and Aryub Zaze in Paktiar province, whilst they're both inhabited by the Zaze tribe, they sort of lean towards the different sides of the spectrum. And you sort of have a similar thing with the other tribes that are there. So the Horse Protection Force is composed and comprised of those different tribes. And one key thing that a lot of people also miss out is that it generally operates independently of the government in Kabul. It works directly or has worked directly hand in glove with the CIA. And the reason that it was instituted was because the area that Sangar mentioned, Paktika, Paktia, and Khost, is a cultural region in Afghanistan known as Loya Paktia. Traditionally, Loya Paktia also encompassed areas east of the Durand Line, like Waziristan. There are sort of tribal commonalities, etc. And that area sort of was seen pretty correctly by the Americans as a stronghold of the Haqqani family, or almost the Haqqani clan, who was Zadran. And so that was the reason, that was the rationale behind instituting the Horse Protection Force. Now, what we saw with the conquest of Gardez, correct me if I'm wrong, Sangar, um, but my understanding is that initially there was a negotiated takeover of Gardez city. Gardez is the capital of Paktia province. It's a major city in Afghanistan. And I think it's the second largest city in the southeast. I think Khost is the largest city in the southeast. But there was a negotiated takeover of the Taliban in Gardez. And essentially, the KPF changed their minds and decided that they were going to fight. And the reason for that was that there was internal disagreements as to whether or not they should surrender. They didn't trust that the Taliban would actually allow them to live if they surrendered, because the dynamics between standard Afghan army soldiers and the Taliban are very different to the Horse Protection Force and the Taliban, who we mentioned work directly with the CIA, and that a lot of atrocities have been attributed to them. So they fought and they surrendered. Now we actually have a friend who had family on both sides of that divide, um, on the Taliban side and the KPF side. So I understand that people have their biases with regard to the conflict in Afghanistan, outsiders, insiders, and I get that a lot of people either think what is happening is terrible or they think what is happening is brilliant, right? But at the end of the day, I would tell everyone to exercise caution and just a basic level of respect, and that we're not happy for the deaths of foot soldiers anywhere. And that I've spoken to my friend. The details are yet to emerge, but the only reason I'm mentioning that is not to bore the people here, but that this is a conflict that unfortunately was imposed on Afghans, but Afghans do continue to die in it. So yeah, that is so essentially that was what happened in Gardez. I believe Khost is still under government control. But not only that, Sangar, we moving
There
on.
is
We
just
actually
just one small bit. There are many reports from Gardez and Khost where it is said that while there was some attempts between local elders and some people in the government to surrender the city to the Taliban, the Host Protection Force, they said no, we will prevent that. So they overrided the government.
I see.
Yeah,
Well,
and
there we go.
yeah, so that's something that is being said. Somebody just also mentioned that in the chat, and in my opinion, I think that it is quite plausible because Host Protection Force is a very powerful institution. They have a lot of power, so that's why it's plausible that may has happened. But anyway, carry on, please.
So, thank you for the addition. But Sangar, we had the speech of President Ashraf Ghani this morning, which said a lot, but said absolutely nothing. What did you make of that?
Yes. So before the short speech of Ashraf Ghani was published, which was pre-recorded, it was not a live speech. There were rumors this morning that he has resigned. There were even Afghan journalists who work for Iran International, the Saudi-sponsored news outlet, and they started spreading this
I can
rumor.
think of one.
Yeah. So they started spreading this rumor on social media, saying that sources from within the government have said that Ashraf Ghani has resigned. And there was absolutely no official coming out and confirming that. But shortly after that rumor was spread, the official statement by the presidential palace was released, the short speech of Ashraf Ghani, where he essentially is saying that because the situation in Afghanistan is very concerning and the security situation is deteriorating, we are going to consult with leaders and people.
Domestic stakeholders and international partners.
Yeah. And that statement by itself, I don't know what to make out of it because it's something that is stating the obvious. Yes, that's what.
And it's stating what's been happening for the last 2 decades, essentially.
Yeah. So it wasn't a statement where something new was being told. It was sort of an assurance that we are talking about it. It reminded me of, there is this British BBC comedy from the 70s and 80s called Yes Minister. And it's basically a satire of how government functions. And if you watch that comedy show, I advise people to watch it because watching it will teach you a lot about how government and politics works. It was such a cliche.
You're more British than I am.
Yeah, so No, I was told during my education at the university that I should watch it. So that's, yeah, I used to watch it, but then I started watching it religiously. But the thing is that that statement of Ashraf Ghani was very typical. There is a problem, so the government issues a statement. We are doing something about it in a very bland, generic terminology. It wasn't really reassuring. It wasn't making people feel any more.
I recall that he said he recalled that he said that I give you my full assurance that well he conveyed condolences to the families of those soldiers who'd passed away. He saluted the bravery of the soldiers. He said that as president he would make sure that the gains of the last 2 decades are not sacrificed, that he would consult with domestic and international leaders, stakeholders. Um, that was it, wasn't it?
Yes, basically very short, bland statement, and that was it. However, after that statement, it was also a very significant decision by the government that the leadership of the resistance against the Taliban are going to be Atta Muhammad Noor, the warlord from Mazar Sharif, and Abdul Rashid Dostum.
Marshal.
Marshal Abdul Rashid Dostum. So
Let's get it. Let's be respectful.
yeah, so for the last 7 years, President Ashraf Ghani tried to isolate these warlords. He tried to dismantle their empire in northern part of Afghanistan. He tried to limit their ability to exert power and influence. And then
And generally failed.
yes, yes, and also something that we forgot to discuss yesterday and the day before yesterday is an audio clip that was circulating on social media where Afghan National Security Advisor Hamdullah Moheb was he was recorded as he was talking about Abdul Rashid Dostum. He said, yes, we give him 3 ministries, we made him a marshal, and we made his daughter a senator. So now it's time for us to demand something back from him.
He also said that Mahaqiq had demanded that a fellow Hazara be appointed alongside him or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember that. But sorry, I just remembered that. But anyways, you were saying.
Yeah, so what's quite revealing about that audio clip that was released 2 days ago, it was leaked 2 days ago, is that it reveals how the government has been functioning all along and how they talk internally about these matters. There is a powerful strongman, a warlord, and that person is seen as some sort of partner in a joint venture. They are giving certain perks and privileges, and that's not how a government should function. That's not how a republic should function. You cannot
That's not how a democracy functions.
No, but now these leaks reveal it's something that we have been observing for the last 20 years. We knew that it's happening, but this specific leak was very telling of how exactly they do this, how they talk about it with each other. And I would say that it's also the timing of that leak is also quite ironic, as everything is sort of collapsing now. All the dirt is coming out. And after hearing that, and after hearing the statement by the government that Atta Muhammad Noor and Dostum are going to be in charge of the entire resistance against the Taliban, you would expect that this will lead to, a pushback against the Taliban. At least that's the assumption, that now they're going to fight back. But while this was announced, we see provincial capital after provincial capital collapsing, like a domino stones, one after the other.
And I think that the speed in which it happened And that was what we sort of I think almost every observer, I mean, Habib Wardak called it a couple of years ago, but I mean, to be fair, he was at the Ministry of Defense, so he knew a lot that we didn't. But I think most observers were taken aback at the speed of it, and I think the speed of it has also fed into the momentum. I'm not too good in physics, but I know that momentum is aided by speed or velocity. And I think that itself has contributed and induced a widespread sort of panic or just sort of an approach by the army or security forces to just basically be like things are collapsing right before our eyes. And when things collapse, generally people just leave the scene. So that needs to be mentioned. Is the fact that the speed of this assault, like let's think of it, Sangat, right? How many provinces have fallen in the last week?
Uh,
Most, most, something
yes,
like
yes,
what we
yes,
would say
yes.
about 28, 29, right?
Yes, exactly.
Now, now think of it this way. That much territory, if we were in Syria, and I'm not an expert in the Syrian conflict, okay? But if we were in Syria, let's say a fight over a city the same size as Kandahar, that would cost tens of thousands of lives, okay?
Yes.
The fighting in Afghanistan was displaced hundreds of thousands of people, right? In terms of the cost of life, has been very, very low, and that is generally just because the appetite for resisting the Taliban um, has been very mute. And I think there's also something to be said for the political aspect to the Taliban's outreach to local officials and whatever. We can't rule out things such as bribery. Officials and sort of commanders and whatever being bribed to essentially abandon their positions or hand over their positions or their weapons to the Taliban. I think there's been a multi-pronged attempt by the Taliban to take these cities with a variety of sort of different means, carrot and stick, armed pressure, threats, money, and we know politics is a dirty game. And I think that's something that I speak for myself personally. I didn't really see that happening, even though I knew obviously how corrupt the government could be. Like I said, the speed of it, I think, has just aided in the collapse of all of these things. So, Sangar, we also currently, we'll get back to Atama Ahmed in a second, but we also have, there's a Mustafa Hotak who's in the live chat has pointed out that currently, as we speak, like as we're speaking, events are unfolding. And Pulicharhi prison currently, as well as Paghman district, which is west of Kabul city in Kabul province, is under attack. But Pulicharhi itself, apparently, the Taliban have gone in just as they went in Sharana and released the prisoners there. They have also gone
I
into Pulicharhi. Apparently, we're still establishing what exactly is happening. I've heard there are riots,
it
or the
there
Taliban have opened the
it's a
prison. I don't know
riot.
what's going.
Okay. So it's a riot inside the prison by prisoners, okay? The guys who are watching you can see in the image here, basically on top, that's the map of this notorious historic prison in Afghanistan that has been the subject of a lot of, very horrific stories for the last 40 years. But that prison is in east of the city, east of Kabul, where I'm originally from. And the prison is sort of divided into different sections, but in each section where there are prisoners, so in most cases Taliban political prisoners, they basically are capable of, when they start a riot, they are capable of blocking off a section of the prison. Okay. And when that happens, then there are skirmishes. These things have happened numerous times in the last couple of years, but now it's very significant because as security forces from around Kabul are running away, deserting, I discussed that last night. It means that if there is a riot going on in Pulicharhi prison and there are very few security personnel in and around Kabul because a lot of them have escaped, it means that it's very easy for Taliban to just go to the prison and try to release all the prisoners. And why is that possible? Because this prison, if you look at the map below, so the city of Kabul, the entire city, and then away from the city, all the way in the east, there is Policharchi, an area out, so rural parts of the city.
Is it not close to the Sabs is kind of to the northeast, right?
It's all one district. So the Policharchi and the Sabs is
Oh,
all, yes.
it's part of the same district.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But the Sabs is still, entirely under government control. But around the Sabs, so Laghman province has fallen to the Taliban. To the east in Nangarhar, you have Hisarak. Hisarak is also an area with heavy Taliban presence, and
very Ghilji area, isn't it? Like Ahmed-Waleed, yeah.
Yeah, and to the south is Logar. So Logar is under Taliban control. Nangarhar is under Taliban control. Laghman is under Taliban control, and this prison is situated in the east of Kabul. So if the Taliban want to attack and release the prisoners, they can come from these three provinces very easily and then try to open and break up the prison. And as we are now talking here during the live stream, I see a lot of messages coming on my phone from people all around Kabul and area who are all saying that there is a riot going on, there are gunfire is being heard. So we
I've
don't
got a
know.
question just
Yes.
with regard to Nangarhar. Do we know 100% that Jalalabad has fallen to the Taliban? Jalalabad city.
Yeah, so with regards to Jalalabad, I have to explain that, okay? So what happens before each and every city collapses is that in Afghanistan, all cities have a major security institution in the city where all major security officials...
The governor, the military compound, the governor's compound.
Yes.
We call it Amniye Komandane in
yes,
Pashto
yeah.
yeah.
So what happened a couple of hours ago before we go on live is that people from Nangarhar were saying that the security personnel from that institution are leaving, they're running away, they're escaping. So as soon as that happens, it means that the collapse of the city is just a matter of few minutes. We saw that in a live stream on Facebook today while it was happening in Asadabad in Kunar. So a guy was standing in front of that building with his phone. He was on Facebook Live. And he was showing how these guys are running away in their vehicles, and local citizens stormed the building. They plundered the building. They took the remaining vehicles and ran away, the cars and bullets and everything. And then a few moments after that, the Taliban entered the city. So that's a scenario that is very plausible that also happened a couple of hours ago in Jalalabad. But to make the story official is that the governor of Jalalabad, Ziaul Haq Amar Khel, needs to appear somewhere in the media or anything and make an official statement that yes, we're handing over the city to the Taliban, or that he escapes Jalalabad in the same fashion how the governor of Ghazni escaped from the city, speeding away in his SUV recently. So
and hold that thought.
Yes.
Hold that thought. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Whilst I'm gone, we'll be back to Jalalabad, Policharchi, whatever, and tweet out the link once more. I'll be back in a minute.
All right. While you were away, I'm going to put the questions. Okay, so guys, you have been asking a lot of questions. I have written down your questions. Okay, Jalalabad is still not liberated. The districts were all under... Okay, Okay. The only. Okay. So, guys, I'm going to repeat it again. If you have a question, please tag AFGHANEYE in the chat and use question marks so that I know that that's a question. Because if it's a general comment, uh, as you can see, hundreds of messages have been posted so far in the chat, so it's very difficult for me to read out all those. Diba Shahidi, what are your views regarding Deutsche Welle latest video circulating in social media accusing Taliban forces of marriages and murders? How to verify and deny? Excellent question, Diba. We were actually planning on discussing that today in the show. It is in our script. We were going to discuss that. So thank you again for asking that very important question. Guys, I really appreciate when you guys pose questions because some of there's so much happening right now in Afghanistan, and I've been sleeping for like less than 3 hours every night. I try to read as many reports as possible, listen to everything, and then there's so much going on that once we are in the live stream and once we are trying to do an analysis and commentary, I can't cover everything. So that's why these questions are very helpful, because let's say we miss an important topic, you guys can help us by reminding us that we should answer that question. So for that reason, I really appreciate that you guys are so active, because this is, at the end of the day, the live stream is something that we are doing together. Okay, so Waleed, welcome back. Yeah, we have more questions, but about Policharchi prison, we have discussed that. Let's move on to Ata Muhammad Noor, the former governor of Mazar-e-Sharif and a very prominent warlord, very significant person, one of a few Afghan multi-billionaires who basically built an empire in Mazar for the last 20 years. He was put in charge of defending Afghanistan along with Marshal Abdurrashid Dostum recently. However, we have learned earlier today that he has escaped to Uzbekistan. There is even there were eyewitnesses who saw him escaping, and shortly after his escape, he issued a statement on Facebook. So let me get that statement and then we will try to translate what he has exactly said. Okay? So, Waleed, here's the statement of General Ata Muhammad Noor.
I actually never knew he had the rank of a general. I swear to you.
Everyone is a general in Afghanistan.
Because I called him what's it called, Ustad Ata, and
Malem
that's
Ata.
yeah, Malim Ata, Ustad Ata, and that's because he was a teacher of the Mujahideen of Jamiat Islami during the Soviet Jihad. But yeah, anyways, this is the first time everyone's going to see me with glasses. But wait, just give me a second. It's a bit blurry. Okay, there we go. So Hamatanan were Aziz. Okay, so my dear compatriots, it is with much regret that in a big conspiracy that has found fruition and is cowardly, um, all government facilities and all government facilities and security forces have surrendered to the Taliban. In this limitlessly large and deep conspiracy, uh, it was desired that I, myself, and Marshal Abdul Rashid Dostum would also be submitted to the Taliban, or basically be handed in this trap, and they were not successful in this conspiracy. Marshal Dostum, myself, the respected governor of Balkh, the MPs of Balkh, the head of the provincial council, and other officials, uh, در محل مسلون هستیم. What does that mean, Sangar?
در محل مسئول هستیم. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
but
just
I think he's basically محل مسلون. I know mahali means like folk, but I don't know what
He's
masloon
made
means.
در محل when they say در محل فلان of that,
Oh,
we are in
okay.
that situation. We are
So
in that.
we're in that situation. Okay,
Yeah.
daru kind of like marhala. Okay, fair enough. But anyways, harfai ziyadi barai bayan. There is a lot to talk about and say, which at the appropriate opportunity I will share with you. I would like to thank all of the dear resistance, all of the dear people who took part and partook in the resistance of Balkh, and those who, without any hesitation, defended Balkh. I would like to sort of express my deep thanks. I leave the people of Balkh to God. رای ما در اینجا پایان نمی- And this is not the end of our journey.
Okay, so this statement was issued as he left Afghanistan. He ran away to Uzbekistan.
Okay, yeah. So sorry. Rai Mahale Maslun means a safe place. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so this is something that is that we need to pause here a little bit. Okay, this guy was appointed, or he and Dostum agreed with Ashraf Ghani that they will be in charge of defending the country. Okay, they are the leaders. This guy is General Atta Mohammad Noor, and the other guy is Marshal Abdurrashid Dostum.
One of the only marshals in Afghanistan's history, by the way.
Yeah, and these guys, their whole reputation is built on being fighters. He's not an academic like Ashraf Ghani, who has written books. His whole
And to be fair to Ustad Atta, he was a respected Jamiyat commander, at least in the Soviet Jihad. He still is seen as just like Ismail Khan, by the way, but he still is seen as sort of a man of the gun, essentially.
Yes, so that's very typical of all these multi-billionaire warlords who have of the last 20 years in Afghanistan, is that they are men of gun and fighting, and they have become extremely rich, and their only claim to fame is that they are fighters. But what are we seeing here? He is the first one to leave the country. He is the first one to run away to the neighboring country.
And there was also, sorry, there's just another, we'll get back to Ustad Atta, but we're talking about Marshal Dostum as well. Marshal Dostum traveled, I don't even want to say fled, I'm trying to be balanced here, but he traveled to Turkey about 2 months ago, and it was said that he was ill and that he was ill, that he was suffering from corona. So he went to Turkey just as Jozjan was being overrun by the Taliban, but Shibirghan had not yet then been taken. So he came back a couple of days ago, once again to much fanfare, to a resounding welcome from those hoping that Marshal Dostum would be able to repel the Taliban. We heard reports that there was tension between Marshal Dostum and Ustad Atta because Marshal Dostum wanted to attack the Taliban from from Mazar-e-Sharif, to which Ustad Atta said, "Don't ruin my province, go and ruin your own," essentially. But what's funny is that a couple of days ago we saw a video of Marshal Dostum in which he was saying that the Taliban are basically strangers or foreigners here in the north of Afghanistan. And it's difficult to know whether he meant that in the ethnic sense that they're ethnic Pashtuns, because if he did mean it like that, it's inaccurate because a lot of the people are they're not Wardek, they're Uzbek. But he said that we'll basically turn the north into a graveyard of theirs like we did once before. And this time, they must not complain, if they are killed or captured. And he was obviously referring to the massacre of Dasht al-Aili in 2001, in which a couple of hundred, or I forgot, but it was I think it was about 2,000 Taliban prisoners of war
Yes.
were summarily massacred in the Dasht al Ali in Jawzjan. So Dostum has always denied that he ordered that massacre, but then in that video he was basically saying, "Ah, well, this time the gloves are off. If it happens, it happens. You know, there's no right of complaint." But in any case, the threats that have been issued.
Just a short breaking news. The border crossing between Afghanistan and Turkmenistan in Akshin has also been taken by the Taliban. So that was one of few border crossings that was
It's a
still
minor border
yes,
crossing, yeah,
yeah, but still significant. So
of course.
that was just moments ago.
That was
Uh,
moments ago. But yeah, so what we're seeing now is that Ustad Atta, and by the way, Ustad Atta and Marshal Dostum have historically been antagonistic toward each other. Marshal Dostum fought against Jamiat-e-Islami in the civil war. Ustad Atta is in Jamiat-e-Islami, or probably the leader of Jamiat-e-Islami. We could almost say the leader. And they've always fought in the turf of northwestern Afghanistan. And there's obviously also, unfortunately, been an ethnic aspect to that, in which Dostum, who is obviously an Uzbek, and Ustad Atta, who's obviously a Tajik, although I actually hear that he's a Suleiman Khair Pashtun that's converted to being Tajik. I don't know what it is, but the point is that ethnicity has become sort of a point of contention between them. So they've always had a historically uneasy relationship, and now they're both fleeing to what seems Uzbekistan in unison. So what's interesting here, Sangar, I want to ask your opinion. What conspiracy is Dostum talking about? Because
okay.
earlier I spoke about the Taliban sort of political outreach, money, sort of the dirty tactics of trying to win territory. But what do you say?
Uh, so when they say that there is a conspiracy, generally what they're saying is that people have been bought, okay? People have been paid money, and that's why they're giving up. They're not fighting, okay?
Okay.
Now, uh, we haven't seen the evidence for that,
Hmm.
okay? We haven't seen the evidence for that. And if they have been bought, who is paying the money? Obviously, they say that the Taliban uh, and whoever is backing Taliban, Pakistan is paying people large sums of money.
Hmm.
Uh, that's basically the core of this conspiracy theory.
I
But
see.
since there are no evidence, I would say that what they are generally describing as a conspiracy is essentially the fact that local elders, shura of elders, shura of physicians in a city, shura of physicians, so doctors, are involved in this.
Hmm.
Shura of shopkeepers. In Afghanistan, all different communities have their own shura, which means a council. Okay, so there is a
Yeah.
council of doctors, council of shopkeepers, council of businessmen, tradesmen, council of religious leaders, imams, etc.
Almost like a guild
Yes,
in
yeah,
classical Europe. Yeah.
exactly. Now, what is happening all across the country is that the Taliban approach these different councils and they tell them, listen, we don't want to have bloodshed inside the city. So, why won't you just go and assure the security forces that they will be spared? We're not going to kill anybody if they give up and allow us enter the city. Now, why is that so significant? In Afghanistan, we live in a society where a lot of things are based on trust. Okay? So let's just say you're just an individual, you're a powerful person or whatever, and you are going to say, I will guarantee that this will happen. I will make sure that this happen. Most people won't trust you as an individual. However, when a council, a group of people who are a community who represent a group of people, when they say, we assure you that this is not going to happen, or we assure you that this is the truth, people are more inclined to accept that. People are more inclined to believe you. So this is something that you have to know when you know Afghan society and how Afghanistan functions as a society. And this is basically the secret behind collapse of all these areas in Afghanistan. Taliban approach the informal network of people in every area, and they give them assurance that they will not kill anybody, etc. And those people, they have a vested interest in preserving security in that city. So, for instance, if you are from Nangarhar or if you're from the city of Mazar Sharif in Balkh, the shopkeepers, the tradesmen, the doctors, and the religious leaders and ethnic community leaders, all these people are people who have a vested interest in preserving the peace and security. They don't want the city to turn into anarchy. So what the Taliban are doing is they approaching those people and saying, look, you can really trust us. Look, we're not going to kill anybody. We don't want any fighting. Just tell those soldiers that they can just go away and run away if they want to, whatever. But this is what the conspiracy. So when we're saying a conspiracy,
there's just something I want to add on here, right? Even in the UK or in Western Europe, you have sort of the importance of community elders, right? The local community, connecting with the local community. Now, these are highly developed countries with very politically mature systems of governance, right? But even then, the informal networks that exist between sort of the citizenry are very important, and the governments generally recognize that. Now, in Afghanistan, as we have established, because this reality is why the Taliban are back, the state doesn't have that level of trust. Informal networks run parallel to the state. And those informal networks, like Sangar mentioned, often consist of what we call white beards, right? Elderly or older men who are seen as reliable interlocutors of the community. And this is the way it's always been in Afghanistan. It's been a very informal sort of system of governance. And in this sort of informal paradigm, these local leaders actually oftentimes, most of the time, enjoy more trust amongst their communities than the government in Kabul does, right? So when we're talking about these leaders, it's actually a very practical and pragmatic step that these elders are approached, and that the Taliban essentially try to, make them acquiesce, basically to give them assurances, to say that no harm will come to you. And we had Habib Wardak 2 nights ago talking about Jaratu. His father is a tribal elder in Jaratu. And he talked about how the district center was generally submitted to the Taliban peacefully. So this is one interpretation of Ustad Atta Muhammad Nur. Another one potentially is this could just be a face-saving message that that there are multiple interpretations which can be drawn from this. This is just face-saving that he's going to scapegoat Ashraf Ghani or something because he's realized that it's too little, too late, that his province, his home turf, is basically being overrun by the Taliban. So it's a face-saving measure. Would you say that there's an ethnic aspect to this, Sangar? Like, you know how local Pashtun communities have been considered to be sympathetic to the Taliban or providing them cover, or there is a sort of a perception amongst some that Ashraf Ghani is basically working for the Taliban because he's Pashtun. It's ridiculous, obviously, but it exists. Do you think he could be indicating at this?
The thing is that when it comes handy, these guys always allude to these ethnic matters. Okay.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that's what he's doing here?
I would say it's very difficult to extract that from this statement.
I would say so as well, but it is a possibility. But I'm just trying to go through all of the different possibilities. But essentially, what you have is Ustad Atta Muhammad Nur, the governor of Balkh, a veteran Mujahideen commander of Jamiat-e-Islami, multi-billionaire, I also hear, who's basically now saying that he and Marshal Dostum are in a safe place. Thank you for everyone in the live chat that helped me with my dari. They're now in a safe place, and that there was a conspiracy in which they, the shady, suspicious, unnamed they tried to also include these two as part of that conspiracy to hand over to the Taliban. And
Just
we shall see what happens.
quick breaking news. In Kabul, helicopters have been sighted landing at the presidential palace. They say that multiple helicopters landed at the presidential palace. So we're not sure what's going on, but people are speculating that President Ashraf Ghani might be going on an unannounced trip somewhere. But
Bro,
this is not
we are.
confirmed.
Is it not mental that we and the 100+ people here are sat here whilst history is being made? And obviously, that history, I hope it turns out okay. But we don't actually know what's going on. But mental, the fact that we've been here, all of us, and I see in the live chat as well, I see a lot of the same names propping up once, again and again and again. So, honestly speaking, like we've, you and I have been so focused on trying to make sense of all of this for the people viewing it, but I think even we've
Oh my
forgotten
God, subhanallah.
what's happened.
Helicopters are helicopter gunships are attacking Pulicharchi prison. So 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 there
Sorry
are
to say.
helicopters flying over the prison and shooting at the prison. I want to see if, yeah, it's difficult to receive any images because it's dark at night, but that's terrible, man.
Are you sure that that's happening?
People who live in so let me get the map again. Prison. Let me get this away. Whoop. Yes. So you see the map of Kabul here, right? Okay. So the Kabul city, and then you have the red mark where the prison is. Okay. So to the west of the red mark, towards the city, in that area, there's a neighborhood, a new built area neighborhood, and there are 3 of our friends who live in that neighborhood. Okay. One of them was also a guest in our podcast, but I don't want to be too specific. But that person is just messaging me right now and saying that he can hear and see helicopters shooting at the prison, or at least the vicinity of prison, because he's about 2 kilometers away, maybe more than 2 kilometers.
There is someone in the chat who's saying that he hears chopper sounds.
Okay. Okay, so the thing is that the prison is sort of away from residential areas, okay, but there are villages and houses nearby. So if a helicopter gunship starts just spraying bullets, those bullets can just land in people's houses, and those bullets are not regular, assault rifle bullets. Those things can penetrate through mud walls and everything. So it's very dangerous.
Bro, like, it's not easy that like, I don't want to say that I'm complaining, but we're covering the day's events as the day's events are transpiring whilst we're sort of on air live with the 100+ people that are here. But in any case, should we move on? And that's not to say that I'm being insensitive here, but let's just wait for the details to emerge. It's bad news.
Yes. Okay. Let's move on
Let's
to
go on to the DW report about the forced marriages. Why don't you break that down for us, Sangar?
Okay, so what happened is that when the districts, so the rural districts around Badakhshan and Takhar in the north of the country, when they fell, It was a sudden, it was a shocking development because out of nowhere, those places started collapsing. Taliban took over many districts,
And they were
and
previously centers of anti-Taliban resistance.
exactly. And when that happened, it was long before entire provinces would collapse. Okay, it was in the initial phase of these domino effect of collapse of different districts. At that time, more than a month ago, rumors started spreading that Taliban are going house to house and telling people that if they have a virgin, a young daughter, or a widow, single woman, that they should give the name and age of those girls to the Taliban because the Taliban want to marry those women. Now, uh, this is something that was being spread on social media. A lot of people claim that, but the problem here is that it's something that was only from hearsay. Okay, it was just hearsay for a couple
Let
of
me
weeks.
interrupt. Let me interrupt as well. There were also reports that these. So there was also this sort of thing has an ethnic facet to it, and that it basically sounds like in the 1929-1930 civil war in which Habibullah Kalakani was overthrown by General Nader Khan. Um, when the Shamali area was taken, the local militia that Nader Khan had recruited from Paktiar, um, they were not, Nader couldn't actually control them because he didn't pay them. So they essentially went and a couple of girls, type, uh, sorry, a couple of women were taken forcefully by those militia from Paktia and wed to some of the militiamen forcefully. So when these reports first circulated, and I'm not gonna, not gonna name the person who was doing it on Twitter, it was said that these Taliban fighters were transporting girls to Waziristan in Pakistan to marry them forcefully. And a lot of obviously Nadir's troops came from Waziristan as well. So what I said at the time is that this sounds a lot like trying to incite um, an ethnic kind of facet to it. But like you said, there was no real credible report. It was just hearsay. So and so said, and so heard, etc., etc. Today, DW, which is the German state broadcaster, it's like the German BBC, actually published a report of multiple women. I think it was about 3 to 4 women in that
Yes,
report,
yes.
basically saying that the Taliban went around forcefully marrying young girls. Um, Now that's very disturbing, and I didn't study journalism at university, so I'm going to defer to you, Sangar. Is that report credible? Because it's very disturbing, first of all, right? Especially in the midst of a war. Is that report credible? How many sources do you need? You were speaking about how to understand whatever news yesterday. Um, I'm asking you here, as someone who hasn't studied journalism, is it credible?
Well, if you have three or four families of people who have escaped from Badakhshan, Takhar, Baghlan, etc., who are now internally displaced refugees and they're living in Kabul, and a journalist goes and asks three or four separate different families and they all confirm the same story, then as a journalist, you can publish that and claim that that's a story that is really happening. So we can assume that there is some truth to this. It's not entirely fabricated. Otherwise, yes. But I don't
So
want
it's
to.
credible, we can
Yes,
say.
yes. But I don't want to go into speculations on how the sources were found, etc. We just don't know. We cannot
Yes.
fact check those things.
Well,
But
in any case,
yes,
if there is anyone from Doha or Quetta or Miran Shah or whatever that's watching potentially, um, what we will say is that those reports are deeply disturbing. They need to be investigated thoroughly, and the results should be shared with Afghans. Those are deeply disturbing. And over there on the screen, everyone sees that Suhail Shaheen, who's a member of the Taliban's political office in Doha, has tweeted and denied that this is happening. But denial is cool, but we need an investigation to get the root of the matter. And so that is essentially
Yes.
that is where we are. And
Uh,
now, finally, there was a question earlier, and that was, can you please explain? I'm quoting, or it's not verbatim, I'm sort of remembering off the top of my head here. We'll get back to the recent developments that we're hearing about, but can we please explain the Sanction Pakistan social media campaign? What is it about and why? Um, and yeah, what do you say? What do you have to say about that, Sangar?
Um, just let me save this because we have to discuss this as well. Something just developing stories. Uh, with regards to sanction Pakistan, I think we discussed this in an earlier live stream. How it is basically a deflection strategy. It is deflecting responsibility from the government in Kabul and basically trying to explain the collapse of the regime at external factors. Okay, that's essentially what it is. Uh, and we also discussed that the government in Afghanistan tried to lobby international community. They even went to UN Security Council and made their complaints. And they said that Pakistan is supporting terrorism, and these terrorists are now taking over our country. So Pakistan needs to be sanctioned. But UN Security Council heard their story, and they sort of nodded and said, "Well, yeah, okay," and then nothing happened. Now we explained already that the reason why they're doing this is because the government in Afghanistan hopes that if Pakistan is sanctioned, that Pakistan will feel the pressure and start forcing the Taliban somehow to stop their attacks and stop fighting and stop taking more territories. But does that actually have any effect? I mean, is it is it is it even possible that Pakistan can stop what's going on in Afghanistan? I know we have explained this numerous times in our podcast that yes, the Pakistanis have a very significant influence over the Taliban. That has been always the case in the last several decades. But that influence does not surmount to the level that they can just dictate what the Taliban should do. So that's why it is a futile attempt to achieve something. But this is basically the backstory. This is basically the reason why they're doing this. And I feel like, okay, they have made an effort. They even managed to address this issue at the UN Security Council. It didn't result into anything. And today we are in a much worse situation. There is fighting right now inside Kabul. The rest of the country is taken over. So yeah, I think we should basically forget this whole social media campaign. It was just embarrassing and nonsensical.
You
There
know, you know,
isn't
you
much
know what the
we can
thing
say
is.
about it.
Do you know what the thing is? Is that you know, I know that a lot of the criticism in terms of our analysis of the conflict in Afghanistan, not just of the last 2 decades, but of the last 4 decades, a lot of the criticism that's come from our fellow Afghans has been being sympathetic to Pakistan or pro Pakistan. Some have even obviously alleged that we're paid by Pakistan. But now here's the thing, and here's what I want to say to those Afghans. You don't choose your neighbors, right? And you don't choose your family. So let's assume that this is all. Let's, for the sake of argument, assume that this is all a Pakistani. The Taliban entirely, from the top to the rank and file, are all on Pakistani payroll, or they're brainwashed by Pakistani madrasas, or just they're entirely under the. They're an arm of the Pakistani military apparatus. Now, here's my question. Okay, assuming that is true, America has left our country alone to basically contend with apparently a Pakistani proxy. At the same time, America has pretty decent relations with Pakistan. Now, as an Afghan, I have a neighbor that's a couple of times larger than me, both in terms of landmass, in terms of population, in terms of economy. Why the hell should I continue to fight my neighbor for the sake of America that invaded me, that also left me to fight my neighbor? Should I not come to some sort of arrangement, modus operandi with Pakistan? Like, am I a clown? Zamala Nasruddinium? Just like no one, all of these supposed nationalists, they don't really think this, that America installed a government in our country. The people fighting that government are entirely Pakistani proxies. Now that the Pakistani proxies have basically been given the green light to take over the country, I'm supposed to fight the America that left me in the first place? Is there no critical thought? What would it not be better to sort of realize, well, maybe this really poor, pathetic neighbor that I have actually wants something from me? And I'm not saying Pakistan is a poor, pathetic neighbor, but if that's your perception, is it not better to come to some sort of arrangement? Why continue fighting this war? Am I Mr. Bean? Am I a clown? But that's like we don't really get that sort of level of introspection, and
Okay,
I think even
just
Hamid Karzai realized. Let me just make one.
yeah.
If you read Directorate S, even Hamid Karzai realized this, that that there's no point fighting Pakistan on behalf of America, and that if America is going to make a deal with Pakistan over Afghanistan, why not Afghanistan make a deal with Pakistan on its own terms? And yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, we're going to switch over to the topic of 5,000 US troops going to Kabul so that they can evacuate the US embassy and other spies and intelligence personnel in Kabul. That's the
I'm just
story
gonna
right
have to
now.
interrupt you. There's a guy in the live stream saying that I'm making fun of Islamic Imams by Mullah Nasruddin. Mullah Nasruddin is a joke from like Turkey all the way to Pakistan. It's not, I'm the grandson of a mullah, for which I have been criticized and insulted. I'm not insulting Islamic Imams. Uh, that's absolutely not what I'm doing. It's a meme, it's a joke.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
So basically, we're going to switch over to the story about 5,000 US troops entering Kabul. There, it is being said right now that Afghanistan has a special security force that is operating the borders. Okay, Sarhadi police. Now they're saying that the Sarhadi police, the border police in Torkham, which is on the Durand line in Nangarhar, that the Sarhadi police have left the border. Okay, so they deserted the border port. I'm not sure how credible this claim is, but people from Nangarhar are now claiming that. Anyways, let's move on. Okay, so a couple of people in the chat have already asked this question. Biden administration has announced that they want to evacuate American embassy in Kabul. The American embassy in Kabul is not like any other embassy. So, for instance, I live here in Leiden in the Netherlands, and about 15 minutes away from me is the political capital of the Netherlands, The Hague, and there are like many foreign embassies there. But the embassies are just a large building, a very fancy building, and there are a lot of diplomats working there. But in Afghanistan, US embassy is a huge complex in Kabul. There are thousands of people working at the US embassy, and all of them are not diplomats. There are intelligence officials, there are media, communication experts, military experts, all sorts of people are working at the US embassy in Kabul. It's basically a capital within the capital of Afghanistan. Now, the Americans have recently asked the Taliban to spare the US embassy. Now, that statement was very offensive. It was very insulting because it implies that the main backer of the regime in Kabul is sort of already preparing for the collapse of the capital, Kabul. Okay? They have issued that statement, and obviously that has caused some controversy. But after issuing that statement, they said we need to send. No, actually, before that, they said we need to send 3,000 troops to help evacuate the entire U.S. embassy. So think about it. They have pulled out all their soldiers out of Afghanistan, but now they have to redeploy 3,000 troops so that they can empty the embassy. Does that make sense?
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't make sense. So it looks like they are trying to send all these troops to hold the capital against collapse. That's what it looks like.
It does, yeah, and especially with the reports that we're getting that the Taliban are there's fighting ongoing in Paghman, right, which is overlooks the city of Kabul, and it's that they're at, like you said, Palacherki, which is just east of the capital. So yeah, it does look like that.
Yeah. So now I'm going to here just let loose of all my breaks and everything, and I'm just going to go full speculation now. So brace yourselves. My, I'm currently what I'm thinking. I will just think out loud when I see the story. Basically, the Americans have realized that the whole country is now collapsing, that the government was unable to hold itself without foreign military support, without American airstrikes. They cannot hold any territory. So the whole country will collapse in a matter of days, and this will make the whole negotiation, the peace process, the Doha deal, it will make all of that obsolete. Okay? Taliban have just basically a fait accompli. They can just take everything. And in order to prevent that, they are going to deploy all these troops to Kabul under the excuse of we are trying to evacuate our embassy, and then turn entire city of Kabul in a huge militarized zone with all their attack helicopters and gunships, etc., and then hold the city, and then create a situation where they force the Taliban to accept some sort of deal, a negotiation, or whatever. That's what I think. That's just my mind going crazy. I don't know, but I would like to know from you, Walid. Am I making any sense?
You know what? Like when you said that you're going to let go of your inhibitions and your breaks, I thought you were going to come out and say something like Hillary Clinton is a shape-shifting alien or something. But what you said was actually very sensible. I agree. And I assume that Zalmay Khalilzad will be in Doha soon, or probably is in Doha, conveying that message to the Taliban. Don't advance on Kabul, don't advance in the city, otherwise we'll see battle. And whilst the Taliban are on a relative level sort of a militarily formidable fighting force in Afghanistan, they're obviously not going to be a match for 5,000, heavily, well equipped, well trained, well supplied U.S. troops who also have air support. So yeah, I think that's a very plausible sort of hypothesis that you've put forward. Um, I said at the beginning of the this live stream that I suspect, rather I hope, that the Taliban entering Kabul was sort of showing up in the national capital was sort of just the same modus operandi of breaking the defensive perimeter, shocking the governor or the local governor, and trying to negotiate a sort of a surrender. I would hope that that was basically you know, that was what they were trying to do to basically induce panic and cause a collapse. But it seems that President Biden has other plans, but we'll see what happens. So, for everyone watching now, we've got quite a full house. Um, what we've
we
basically
we have to
we've
talk
covered
about.
everything. We've covered everything that's happened today, as well as events that are currently unfolding. We're here, and I don't even want to sound dramatic, but all 120 something of us are here watching things, speaking about them or listening as they unfold. So I hope things turn out for the best, and perhaps one day, if things do turn out well, we can all sort of say, I remember that day Ahmed-Waleed, Kakar, and Sangar were talking, and God accepted their dua, and God accepted their prayers, and things happened sort of things turned out for the best. But what is the latest intel, Sangar? What are we hearing from Twitter?
Okay, before we go to latest news, there are some topics that we were forgot to discuss. Uh,
Did
Very
we?
important, yes, 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 very important. So uh, today, an announcement was made by the government that
Ah,
General Sami Sadat is made the head of security of the Afghan capital, Kabul. Now, who is General Sami Sadat? He is a graduate of the Rumsfeld Institution. Donald Rumsfeld, you know, the notorious guy. He created an institution and he handpicked a group of Afghans, and he basically made sure that these guys are educated. And Sami Sadat is an expert in military, in security affairs, etc. He has also a private firm, a security firm that provides
logistics.
logistic services for he provided logistic services for American troops and the Afghan government, but he is also 31 years old and he's a general. Okay, so that's again a general, 31 years old. This guy, he was responsible for security of Lashkargah, the capital of Helmand province. He is originally from Lashkargah. And before Lashkargah fell a few days ago, he put up a resistance against Taliban. He asked the Air Force to basically bombard the entire city. Whole bazaars, including a private hospital and mosques, were bombed. Hundreds of people died. The scenes of the bombardment in the city were terrible. Lashkargah is a very lush, green, beautiful city, but the bombing campaign have basically destroyed the city, and he wanted to preserve the city from falling into Taliban hand. And when he saw that the airstrikes are not really helping, he sent out a message on WhatsApp and told residents of Lashkargah to leave the city. He said, "You guys pack up, leave the city. We are going to fight here and defeat the Taliban. And once the city is secure, then you can come back." So obviously, when the city was being bombed and destroyed, a lot of people were forced to escape. They were forced to run away, which is shocking at this current stage, at this moment, with all the corona pandemic, and there is a heat wave in Afghanistan. But he didn't manage to defend the city. So the city fell eventually and the Taliban took over.
In
Now,
vain.
yeah, now after totally destroying Helmand, capital Lashkargah, sending thousands of people away and forcing them into becoming internally displaced, refugees inside Afghanistan. Now he is appointed as head of security in Kabul. So what is he going to achieve in Kabul? Let's say Kabul is under siege. I discussed this last night during live stream. I tried to explain how much of a disaster it's going to be if, God forbid, Kabul is under siege, because there are 7 million people in Kabul. There's very little water. The city is already overpopulated. All trade routes to Kabul are under Taliban control. So that situation is going to be a huge catastrophe. And when this guy, the 31-year-old general who just left Lashkargah as ruins, is going to be responsible for the security of Kabul, that doesn't seem like a smart move. That doesn't seem like that it's going to be resulting into anything resembling security and safety. It's a disaster, but still the government made him responsible for the security of the capital. Now,
I have news for you, Sangar.
yes.
Your hypothesis was wrong.
What?
On Kabul.
Oh,
Biden's sending another 1,000 troops, but there are already 4,000 US members of staff at the embassy, which raised the total number to 5,000. But obviously, we know media organizations like to, quite frankly, lie to get clicks and things of the sort. So I guess we'll see what happens. I think Sami
Okay.
Sadat, General Sami Sadat, was the one person we basically missed out.
And
We've
Mehdi Hassan. We have to
Mehdi
talk about
Hassan,
Mehdi Hassan.
of
Okay,
course.
so let's go to Mehdi Hassan. Okay, so Mehdi Hassan is originally an Indian Muslim journalist from the UK. He is very famous all around the world. First, he was a debater and journalist and commentator. He had a column in The Guardian, I believe. Yeah. And he has been always very outspoken about war on terror, US foreign policy, Western aggression against Muslim countries, specifically Iraq, Afghanistan to a certain extent. But he has always been
Syria.
But in Syria, he's sort of divided because he also has some sympathies with Iran and the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Like, for instance, he sort of sometimes tried to perpetuate those stories that, basically all Syrian rebels are Al-Qaeda and Daesh, but he sort of...
The white helmets are all Wahhabi
Yeah.
terrorists.
Yeah, so he wasn't as toxic as these other leftist journalists and commentators. He sort of rolled back on some of his commentary and then criticized Bashar al-Assad, which is very good, But he is also someone who says, I am a Shia Muslim, I identify as a Shia. And he says that does not have any influence on his political views and anything. However, now he has had his segment on MSNBC where he said that the Hazara Shia in Afghanistan are going to be massacred by the Taliban if the Taliban take over. And he sort of blamed America for handing over Afghanistan to the Taliban, which now is going to result into genocide against the Shia. Basically, that's the gist of his monologue. Now, I think, last night during the live stream, I also talked about the genuine concerns of Shia in Afghanistan, uh, and that those concerns are legitimate and those concerns need to be also addressed. Doesn't matter if there is a Taliban government or any other government in Afghanistan. There are repeated Daesh attacks against the Shia in Afghanistan, and this needs to be stopped. Somebody needs to prevent that, and if someone is concerned about them, then I would actually, applaud that. But what's the problem with the statement of Mehdi Hassan is that while he portrays the conflict in Afghanistan as a potential genocide against Shia, he is not as vocal about systematic persecution of Sunnis in Iraq. Okay? So in Iraq, we have a government backed by the Americans, a Shiite government that has persecuted Shia in Sunnis in Iraq, and that persecution of Sunnis in Iraq has, to an extent, contributed to the creation of Daesh, the Islamic State of Iraq first, and then Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And that's something that is missing from Mehdi Hassan's, commentary and pontifications. He needs to address that as well, but he's very cautious with that. Okay, he's very cautious with that. But on the other hand, now that he's talking about Afghanistan, he is basically saying yes. The Sunnis, the Taliban, they are going to massacre all Shia, and in my opinion, that comes.
I also just I'm also pretty bored of the surge of Afghanistan experts that we found overnight. Um, I get that people are passionate about different causes in different countries and oppression and whatever, but at the same time, I really wish that people had a sort of a level of humility, and especially with Afghanistan. This is no disrespect intended toward Syrians, Iraqis, Palestinians, but those conflicts have been focused on quite a lot, right? A lot of the coverage of the last decade has gone on those conflicts, right? Afghanistan kind of just got lost in between. Afghanistan was the good war. Afghanistan was the war with the good intentions, with the good end result. And, whatever happened there didn't really warrant much mention unless there was an explosion in Kabul at some point. That was basically it. And now we've got a surge of Afghanistan experts, and we've got a surge of Afghanistan experts, especially amongst those who say that they're critical of Western imperial policy towards the Muslim world. But when it comes to Afghanistan, they're now basically banging the drums of alarmism. And Sangar, is everything okay?
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we just heard a very loud noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But essentially, we've got a surge of these alarmist experts who are now banging the drums of terror, of impending doom, of as if the war started with the Taliban offensive. I've got news for these people. The war has been going on for 2 decades. This war has only now just come to the cities. This war has only now escalated and it's widened in its scope. This war has always been here, and this is something that also goes to the Kabul bubble. We've always, for those of us who always saw that this conflict has never had a military solution, we've always been in favor of a negotiated end to the conflict. And what were we called? We were called terrorist sympathizers. And I'm not just talking about since the AFGHANEYE has been started. I'm talking about even as a teenager, right? And the reason we were called terrorist sympathizers is because these guys sat in Kabul behind high blast walls or in the hideous apartments that have been built over the last 2 decades. They didn't know that there was a war going on. War was distant, and war was fought by American soldiers, American aircraft, or poor Afghan soldiers. Now that war is coming to their doorstep, suddenly we look sensible to them. Why? Because suddenly they've realized that war is ugly and that peace is actually a lot better than war, right? And it's the same thing with Mehdi Hassan and all of the Instagram and the Twitter activism and the expertise that we've suddenly stumbled across this supposed gold mine of expertise where bad things are going to happen in Afghanistan. And this isn't me saying that Afghanistan is going to turn a new chapter and that we'll have rivers of milk and honey and it'll be the Garden of Eden. Far from it. But where were you for the last 19 years? We had a war going on then. No one spoke about it. The only thing that's changed is that the side winning the war is looking more and more like it's going to win a total victory. So Mehdi Hassan basically trying to paint this as ISIS 2.0 coming into Afghanistan, massacring Syria, sorry, massacring the Shia, isn't just dishonest, but quite frankly, I'd expect some humility. I've also seen on Twitter scholars, religious scholars, and we respect religious scholars and the studies that they've undertaken and their qualifications. But religious scholars, Sangar, would you agree with me, right? These guys are at the forefront of telling the layman, know your place, leave religion and the topics of religion and the different contentious issues to people who've studied religion. And us laymen, we're basically like, yes. But then these religious scholars oftentimes have the worst political takes. Their political science is on a Mr. Bean level, but yet we're supposed to take them authoritatively, right? And that is I've also seen on Instagram there's this how you can help Afghanistan right now. Raise your voice, and also if you're not posting about Afghanistan, I'm watching you and I'm not going to be your friend anymore. What the hell is going on? If people are posting about Afghanistan, right, because they're scared they're going to lose you as a friend, newsflash, they don't actually care about Afghanistan. It's not genuine. Secondly, because Afghanistan is a convoluted conflict and there isn't a clear aggressor like Israel or Palestine or any of the other conflicts in the world, because it's a war between Afghans, a lot of non Afghans are understandably hesitant about getting involved. If they say the wrong thing, like Mehdi Hassan has said the wrong thing, we'll be annoyed with them. So even when they play it safe, you've got the Instagram woke activist crowd angry at them. If they have the wrong political opinions, the Instagram woke crowd are angry at them. Um, we need to elevate the discourse and be much more mature about this. So that is my rant. I'm really sick to death about people cheering on this war on one side or the other side, knowing that a single hair of theirs won't be harmed in it. Like we said, a friend of ours lost family members today. Now, you can disagree with those family members' political orientations, right? Don't celebrate it like it's a computer game. Have some class, right? Similarly, we've now got the people who are all pro B-52, who were in favor of Trump's South Asia strategy, which bombed Afghanistan thousands of times in a single year. Now, suddenly, they realize that peace is actually important. But yeah, we are where we are.
Okay, Walid, my dear friend, we have so many questions. Whoo! Okay, our chat is like very active. These guys, the questions and very good questions. So we have to now go over the questions. I have sent the questions to you. Can you see them?
Let me check them right now. شه په نوبت یې کوئ دا پوښتنې
او په نوبت کې که بس هغه د حکمتیار پوښتنه اول وکړه ځکه چې د حکمتیار شوقیان دوه درې کسان راته پرایویټ کې مسیجونه کړي دي چې د حکمتیار صاحب په اړه لږ معلومات راکړي نو
Okay, where is Hikmatyar? I don't know.
next question. No. Okay,
Where is
seriously.
Hikmatyar? I don't know. But Hikmatyar, in the presidential election last year, came third place, and he basically ran on a peaceful, non-armed Talib ticket, essentially. We want the Americans out. He's very heavily critical of Ashraf Ghani. Hikmatyar was the first guy that was actually telling reporters that he was told of plans to distribute weapons to militias in the north that were allegedly being supplied by they were being armed by India. Hikmatyar also has come out and said that the government in Kabul has sort of made overtures and offers towards him that he join the anti-Talib resistance, which he has refused. So, yeah, that is, other than that, where is Hikmatyar? Somewhere in Kabul. Okay. Now,
He's very quiet. Okay,
mhm.
we haven't heard anything in the last few days from
And
him.
if we know anything about Hikmatyar, we know that he doesn't do anything without giving it a lot of thought and consideration, at least not recently. I hope he had that consideration when he dragged the country into a civil war in 1992 and screwed the whole city of Kabul up. That's a topic for another day. Okay. Ah, yeah, and Hikmat has said, remember the massive his protest from a few months ago where they called for Ghani to resign and a political settlement. So Hizb Islami, with Hikmatyar at the top, are very anti-President Ashraf Ghani, and I would say that they would agree with me and my article in which I blamed Kabul's current triumvirate for trying to sabotage the peace process. In any case, Jake Thompson asks, and I'm going to posit this question to you, Sangar, where can I find first-hand reports from the Taliban themselves on their views of governance? Also, how can we confirm or deny the stories accusing the Taliban of forced marriages and unjustified murder?
Al Imara English. That's their website. You can uh, you can approach their media representatives. They're on social media. Sohail Shaheen, Dr. Mohammed Naeem, Zabiullah Mujahid, all the representatives, they're on social media, they're on Twitter, they have multiple websites. You can send them an email. That's how most researchers, journalists obtain information from the Taliban. That's the way to do it. You have to directly approach their media representatives, their spokespeople, um, and usually they answer questions very easily. So I suggest you do that. That's the best way. Walid, where are you? I don't see you
Just,
anymore.
just, just give me a second. There's a bit of turbulence going on at the moment.
Sabur Ahmad says visiting their website. I do not recommend it. You will end up in a watch list, maybe because of Schedule 7 and Prevent in UK. Maybe that's a problem in UK, but in most part of the world, people just go and read whatever they have to say, especially if you're researching and investigating matters. It's not a big deal. So
Okay, let's go. Osama Qayyum, latest Biden statement: 5,000 American soldiers to be deployed. We already discussed
answer
that.
that. Yes.
Mustafa Hotek, there's heavy fighting at Parman in Kabul. We discussed that. I hope that ends quickly. Um, Diba Shaidi, what are your views regarding DW's latest video circulating accusing Taliban of forced marriages and murder? How to verify and deny those stories to non-Afghans? We discussed that. It deserves to be investigated. For the time being, I would say that the reporting seems to be credible. Um, but however, I would say that the reports initially circulated of a supposed Taliban memorandum, sort of instruction given to fighters, were proven to be false by researchers that we are in contact with. However, if it has happened, it's like if it probably has happened at a local level, and that is unfortunate, deserves to be condemned, and deserves to be investigated. Um, Osama Qayyum, what explains Taliban's quick takeover of Afghanistan? Is there any conspiracy? I think we've answered that. Asadullah Ghani has appointed Semi Sadat in Kabul. Are they looking for urban warfare? I think we answered that. Damn, we've been ahead of the curve. Um, SYA, I'm hearing from within Kabul that around 18 to 20,000 Taliban are already in the city and are waiting to take over when the rest of the force come in from other provinces. Can you confirm? I can't. Prince Malik, will Taliban rule make the freedom of Kashmir or Xinjiang more likely? My humble opinion, no. Sangar?
Yes, I think that sometimes it is good to take people accept what they say and believe what they're saying. So the Taliban have been saying for the past several years that they do not have an internationalist political agenda like the other jihadi groups like Al-Qaeda and Daesh, etc. So they say that their main concern is independence of Afghanistan and an Islamic government in Afghanistan, and that they have sympathy and solidarity with Muslims around the world, but they even had meetings with the Indians, with the Chinese, which was seen as very offensive by Uyghur activists who are very deeply shocked to see an organization that claims to fight for independence of their land going to China and meeting Chinese officials as if they're friends. So I wouldn't expect that Taliban will somehow get involved in warfare in Kashmir or in East Turkestan or in Palestine or in Myanmar or in Syria or whatever. There are so many
Understood.
places. I would say that it is most likely that they will just stick to Afghanistan. That's
Condemnations
yes.
and condemnations abroad.
The,
Fair enough. By the way, so someone messaged me. It is actually 5,000 troops. My mistake, guys. I'm just going by what I receive. I haven't been able to read things in depth, but it does. Let me just double check.
the NBC article that I showed on the screen, that was a quote from the Biden administration where they
Yeah.
said 5,000 troops. So
So there are. Wait, let me check. There are 4,000 troops. Another 1,000 are being deployed to help the 4,000 withdraw. And so there are 5,000 troops to help the 4,000 embassy staff and other civilians withdraw. Fair enough. That so just once again, that was to clarify.
the fact checker who is sending us messages, you are fired.
Okay. Afghanistan, has Hayratan fallen, or is there still fighting there? I'm not aware that it has fallen, but obviously, Ustad Atta and Dostum used Hayratan to travel across the Amu Darya into Uzbekistan. Akil Al Umrani, how did the unqualified Muhib get into that position? How was he allowed to start employing Afghans from London into ministry positions? Well, when you become the national security advisor in the current government in Afghanistan, you have a lot of influence and a lot of, you know, recruitment is to a large extent your prerogative. How did he get the job? I believe he was in contact with Ashraf Ghani and knew Ashraf Ghani from the 2009 presidential campaign, in which I believe Hamdullah Mohib was studying at the American University in Afghanistan, and that's where he met Ashraf Ghani. He ran Ashraf Ghani's 2014 presidential campaign, sort of taking charge of the online aspect of it. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say. Asadullah asks, where is Dostum? I believe he's in Uzbekistan. Pure Ideas Portal. Have the Taliban taken over Torkham border crossing? I'm not aware that they have, and until I receive confirmation, that's my answers are just going to be that blunt. Tiffany Lasana, how centralized are the Taliban? Are there factions that might fight for power after taking Kabul? It's not impossible that there may be internal disagreements after a quote unquote victory, but with regard to how centralized they all report to what is known as the Leadership Council, the Rahbari Shura, and the Rahbari Shura at the top sits the Amir, who is Mawlawi Hibatullah Akhundzada. So they all report to him, and they have sort of provincial councils and district councils, and in those they have provincial commanders and district commanders. So they are centralized, but they also, you know, at the end of the day, everyone does report to the Amir. But on a military level, they are flexible enough to respond to situations as they transpire on the ground. Mohammed Rahman asks, should a Swiss model be suggested for Afghanistan as a solution? What do you say, Sangar?
What is the Swiss model?
I'm assuming they mean decentralization.
Uh, there is a podcast coming about decentralization where we will discuss elaborately what precedes a decentralized government, what are the major factors that need to be considered before even suggesting that, and we haven't really done the research and all the work preparation for that podcast, but it's coming up, and once we have it, then we will answer this question thoroughly, inshallah.
Okay. Muhammad Rayaz. During wars, males and soldiers and militias are known to be taking women as war bounty. Why should it? Well, I think it means war booty. Why should it be surprising, even? Because the Taliban claim to be a religious movement, and it is seen as the peak of scumbaggery to be forcefully marrying women. Um, there are standards and etiquettes that observe in war. Frank Adado, the Hazara leader that joined the Taliban, are they representative of all Hazaras or not? No ethnicity is represented by one leader alone, I would say. And I don't actually know to which Hazara leader he is actually referring. Osama Qayyum is asking, can you do a live interview of a Taliban representative? We can, if they agree, of course, to come on. It takes two to tango. We haven't, as of yet, asked them. Uh, we have asked people, not government officials, because we don't have contact to them. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Camillo drains them, says, Sangar, you said the war can potentially last a few years. Do you still believe that?
I uh, I believe that the factors that were as they were for a extension of the conflict before what is happening now, if those factors remained as they were, then the war could last for years. Yes. For so what were those factors? For instance, if these different militias in Afghanistan continue to receive supplies of weapons, air support, okay? If that continues, then obviously the war can last several years. But what we have seen now is that despite the fact that militias were armed, the government is not receiving any air support from the Americans, and the air power capability that the government has also collapsed. So for that reason, I don't think that the war can last years and years. From what it looks like, is that the city of Kabul may remain under siege for a long time because, well, Amrullah Saleh and these people, the NDS 0102 units that have all gathered in Kabul, they might try to take a last stand, um, and that could last for a while. But
Okay.
I hope it doesn't because it will result in many casualties.
Okay. Osama Qayyum, what about predictions in Hadith about the forces of Khurasan, which will liberate India? Are they not Taliban? Um, I'm not a mufti. I can't really
I
issue
want to
opinions
I want to say
on.
something about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, there are several friends of mine who have actually studied with hadith scholars, and they say that those hadith are considered as very weak. Okay,
Okay.
and those hadith are not considered as authentic, and furthermore, the fact that something is part of a prophecy in a hadith should never be seen as something that is part of our political analysis and speculation. We are not Imran Hussein, okay? You know, the conspiracy theorist mullah from Trinidad and Tobago, who is very popular on YouTube. He does that kind of stuff, okay? We don't. Serious people who are doing political commentary and political analysis, they don't do that. And serious scholars of Islam, theology, hadith, etc., they also don't do that. And I think it is best that we refrain from that kind of political talk where we uh, basically take a weak hadith and then try to use that as a, how would you say, as a
A litmus
hypothesis.
test.
Yes. No, as a
Yes.
hypothesis. We shouldn't do that because it has serious theological implications, and as Muslims we should be very careful of venturing into that area.
Yeah, and even if it was a Sahih hadith, we're not really, we're not muftis that can pass judgment on it. In any case, maybe the reason for the troop deployment is because Benghazi is still fresh in Biden's mind and does not want a repeat of it, as the Republicans will once again use it against him. I mean, yeah, those are that is a typical example of the pitfall of democracy, that sensitive national security decisions need to also be taken in the context of popular approval when the public don't actually have access to the information that officials have. Sabur Ahmad, can you guys have guests who are Azara, Uzbek, etc.? We would love to. I mean, obviously, we don't really have guests on our podcast based on their gender, their ethnicity, their even their religion. We've had non-Muslims.
We
It's not
don't
a
even
problem.
ask people what their ethnicity is.
Yeah,
We've had
yeah,
few guests of whom I don't know what is their ethnicity.
yeah.
I don't.
So, I mean, we if someone happens to be Uzbek, and they'll be great, and if they're Turkmen, that will also be great. And if they can contribute and help our listeners understand something from a different perspective, no matter what their ethnicity or even what their religion, we're cool with that. Ilham Hatami, what will happen to someone like Ustad Sayaf? What is his potential relationship with an incoming Taliban power? Is there bad blood between Sayaf and the Taliban? Sangar.
Oh, there's definitely bad blood between Sayaf and Taliban because Abdurrab Rasul Sayaf was a very significant jihadi commander during the 1980s Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. And as a very significant jihadi commander, he was also the one who received a lot of support from religious scholars from the Middle East. The Salafi movement supported him. The Ikhwanis, they supported him. And there were many local Afghan religious scholars, students of Islamic madrasas, who joined his movement. But when he sort of became a rogue warlord during the civil war, a lot of people from his own movement were disillusioned and they joined the Taliban. So some of the very significant leaders of the Taliban are former leaders of Abdurrab Rasul Sayaf's organization. And they have not just political differences, they have also deep rooted ideological and theological differences. So for that reason, they are not very easily reconcilable with one another. Um, Furthermore, in the last 20 years after U.S. Invasion of Afghanistan, Sayaf was always brought up by the Americans and by the government in Afghanistan as sort of the most significant religious scholar, and his views and opinions were presented often as, look, Sayaf is a major scholar. He said so, then it must be true. So he was sort of the mufti of the state. And basically, he made some very controversial statements. He did sort of mass takfir on the Taliban and said that these guys, they are kuffar, they're not Muslims because they fight against us. So those kind of very uh, you know, uh, dangerous statements are the reason why Taliban as a movement in general, they don't like him. You hear a very negative tone in uh, statements by the Taliban addressing Sayaf. So yeah, I wouldn't expect them to reconcile with one another. But you never know. We at the end of the day we hope for peace. We hope for reconciliation, even between Sayaf and the Taliban. So
Mustafa Sayed says, do you see the Taliban ever attempting to take Peshawar and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa once they handle the situation in Afghanistan, since they do not recognize the Durand Line either? My answer to that is no. I do not see the circumstance in which they would try to take Peshawar. What's your stance, Sangar?
we had a question earlier about Kashmir and East Turkestan. As I said, the Taliban do not have a internationalist jihadist
But
agenda.
Mustafa Sayed is saying that they don't recognize the Durand Line.
Yes,
So when the Taliban say, for example, our cause is limited to the borders of the Afghan state,
yes,
there's a border they don't recognize. And that
yes,
border is the Durand Line.
yes.
Well, so where do they draw the Durand Line? Do they draw it at the Indus River or Atak or Peshawar or Waziristan? Will they try to militarily take over wherever those areas are?
Yeah, so obviously this is actually, guys. Before I say anything further, I sort of get the impression that a lot of questions that are being asked about what are the Taliban are going to do and this and that, eh, maybe you guys should ask the Taliban those questions.
Yeah, yeah. That
maybe maybe you should ask them. They have spokespeople and etc. But
they even have
anyways,
Twitter accounts, and some of
yeah,
them speak good English. You should maybe, just ask them, like, brother,
yeah.
what do you think? Will you try to take over Waziristan?
Yeah, but in any case, not recognizing the Durand Line does not mean that Afghanistan has ever decided to just go on a rampage and try to take those areas. It didn't happen in 1947, and yeah, it didn't happen anytime later. So just because Afghans don't recognize it as an official border, uh, regardless of who's in charge of Afghanistan, whether it's the communists, the royal family, the American-backed republic, or the Taliban, they haven't done that. So I don't expect anybody who would do anything of that nature.
Okay. So, I just want to add one thing to Mustafa Sayed. No government in Afghanistan, like Sangar has said, has recognized the Durand Line. That doesn't mean that they would try to conquer areas east of it, but it's more so just a symbolic rejection, generally speaking. The Taliban would not recognize it. It would be foolish to try to coerce them into recognizing it. Um, they, I believe, just used to think that it was just no borders between Muslims, but there's also just the nationalist stubbornness that's there, um, where it's just, symbolically, I'm just not going to call it a border. I'll just call it the Durand Line. And do I call it a border? No, I don't. But neither are they going to try, in my opinion, to storm across the line.
Guys,
Okay.
we've been live for more than 2 hours, almost two and
hmm
a half hours. As much as I would like to do this all night, I haven't
We'll
slept.
answer. We'll answer the last two
Yeah.
questions. Is the Taliban setting itself up to face insurgency after accepting surrenders and letting enemy commanders like Dostum and Atta Mohammad Nur flee? Is an exile government and continued civil war possible?
Ooh.
I don't believe that's the case because for an insurgency, at least you need some sort of sanctuary amongst local people. And in a lot of these districts where the district centers were taken, local people in the villages across the districts had already basically submitted to the Taliban. It was just the district center that remained. With regard to a government in exile, it is possible. However, to what extent that would be recognized is up to debate. Up for debate, rather. When should we aim for now as observers? Uh, what should we aim for now as observers when peace seems far away? Would the Taliban consider a Doha deal in exchange for international recognition? Would they consider a Doha deal? I'm sorry, I don't really know what that means. But in any case, Someone said, give a live update before you go. Um, and the live update is as follows. Ziaul Haq Amar Khail has tweeted. Oh, that was 2 hours ago. Never mind then, my bad. But essentially, Andrew Quilty has said that the CIA-backed O2 unit tried to put up a last stand in Jalalabad before Jalalabad surrendered. And as we know, Jalalabad is now under Taliban control. Live update. Let me, refresh my Twitter. Um,
Guys, I think we need to wrap it up.
Okay, there are reports of Taliban entering Kabul province. The Taliban now have a significant presence in Surubi district, Khak Jabar, and Paghman districts. We knew that, and we've also heard these reports of helicopter gunships firing on Polocherki. And I pray that things turn out normal, they turn out well. The stuff that we're discussing is obviously, it's pretty disturbing and upsetting. And like I mentioned, I was, alhamdulillah, blessed enough for my family members to not have lost their lives or have been injured. Others weren't. So for the Afghans and the non-Afghans here, who are, may have one or the other bias, please maintain a certain level of dignity and respect. Don't gloat about things. At the end of the day, Afghanistan is the poorest country in the world. It's been forced into these wars over the course of 4 decades. So even if someone has political inclinations and they have to, as is usually the case, have to align with one armed faction or the other, it doesn't necessarily make them a scumbag or a puppet or anything of the sort. And especially if people are dying, let's try to maintain a level of respect. And now we're going to end the podcast. And sorry, it's not the podcast, it's a live stream. Before we end it, what I'm going to say is that there are loads of experts, right? Loads of experts. You've seen them on Twitter. Some of them overnight experts. Some of them have been playing at expertise for the last 2 decades, some of them for the last 4 decades. The events of the last week have thoroughly disproved all of them. Now, for example, there was Sangar and I, we were sort of saying this could potentially take a bit of time. The Taliban have the upper hand. Kabul will screw itself over by not engaging in meaningful negotiations. And we were wrong because the Taliban, quite frankly, took everyone by surprise in how quickly they took over the whole country. Could we have that map up again, Sengar, just so we can demonstrate to people that have joined just now what the current situation is like? But in any case, these experts have been proven wrong. The media organizations that have throttled and monopolized the discourse on Afghanistan have got it wrong. They got the fact wrong that the Taliban are an indigenous movement. The rest of us were saying it. We were saying that there wasn't a military solution to the conflict. They were disputing it. We were saying that the surge, wouldn't work. We were saying that military occupation is not the solution. We were saying that negotiations were the only way out. We were saying that delaying tactics were not going to benefit anyone except the Taliban. On all of these things, these experts who've been imposed on us by the multi-billion-dollar organizations that back them, they got it wrong, right? And now the Taliban taking over apparently being a hell-like situation. Well, I just spoke to my family in Kandahar and things are not ideal there. It's not Switzerland, right? It's not the Netherlands, but, life is progressing as normal. They got it wrong every single time, right? Now, if you want actual Afghans, if you want a platform of Afghans that speaks for Afghans, that isn't backed by those multinational, multi-billion-dollar conglomerates or shady organizations with ideological vendettas, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you agree with our cause, and our cause is to provide a counter narrative to the coverage of Afghanistan, to really give a critical perspective on the events of the last 2 decades, indeed the last 4 decades, maybe even the last century, do consider do consider becoming patrons on our Patreon. You could also alternatively directly donate to us on PayPal. And here's the thing. If we don't do it, nobody else is doing it. The only reason, the sole reason we are here is because that if we were not doing what we're doing right now, no one else in the international media was doing it. Alhamdulillah, with the support of our subscribers, of the patrons, of the people that have donated to us, we've actually, in the English speaking world, managed to change and alter the narrative. We've managed to put a non-ideological standard Afghan voice put forward in which we can articulate with the Anglosphere on terms that Afghans can understand, but also that the West can understand. And that was, for example, why I spoke to the BBC this morning. So if you agree with the cause, please continue to support, share our content. And yes, Sangara, any final remarks?
Um, Guys, I just want to say thank you for being with us for the last couple of days. We've made a commitment. We said we will do a live stream every night because the situation is very volatile right now in Afghanistan, and you guys are with us. This is something that we really value your questions, your support, and I just want to say that on behalf of myself and Ahmed-Waleed Kakar, we really appreciate you guys being with us every night. So thank you for that, and
And
until
I hope and I pray that in the days, weeks, months, and years from now, the hundred or so people that were watching things, like I said, as history was unfolding, that will look back at this period knowing that what transpired, hopefully, was positive, would bring about an end to the war, the conflict, and the suffering of Afghans. That is the most paramount thing.
Walid, thank you. Tomorrow, at what time should we go live? Because we have many requests.
زوایم وقتی به وکو پدی چه افغانستان کی خلق مش څخه ګیله لري چې ولی وختي نه راځي.
سمه ده وختي به څو بجې؟
زوایم داسې که شپږ بجې اوه بجې که شروع وکړو بعد به نه وي
شپږ
دوی
اوه
څه وایي
بجې؟ نه
یو وارې د دوی
نه
څخه پوښتنه
کابل
وکړو.
کې خلک وایي د ورځې له خوا نه راسې که چیرې کولی سئ چې 12 بجې 11 بجې د موږ په وخت 11 یا 12 بجې د ورځې
11 12 نو نه کېږي نو مصرفه یو داسې که
لږ
درې
وخت
څه-
ماسپښین
که
سمه ده سمه ده
ماسپښین. صحیح.
Well, guys,
مشوره به
yeah,
وکړو.
we will announce tomorrow in the morning at what time we will go live, okay? We'll try to do it a bit early so that our viewers in Kabul can also watch because now it's late at night. It's almost morning in Kabul. Okay? So thank you all and we see you tomorrow, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Take care.
rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum.